Yeah, all the characters kind of come across as pale imitations of the previous movie. Like Lucius is nowhere near what Maximus was. The two retarded emperors are just like a joke compared to Commodus. Commodus was a really interesting character. Like he had understandable motivations for everything that he did, and like he acted out of necessity. Yeah, he was kind of needy and desiring approval from his father, and he couldn't get it, so ultimately he flipped out and murdered him. But you understood at least where he was coming from, and he was a dangerous character. These guys are just clowns.
Even though the movie was so long, I would have appreciated like maybe another 10, 15 minutes to give us some more background on like how these two twins became emperor. Like where did they come
not
from?
I think the movie...
They were not twins.
They weren't?
Me off.
Also, they were gay, right?
No. So unless what's his name, Ridley Scott, unless he wants to redefine biology, and twins are still twins even if they're born on a different year. 189, 188, they were not twins.
Irish twins?
Was an older brother.
Oh.
So there is that. And also, I don't have a big problem with Geta, because Geta is described as being a little flamboyant in the sources, specifically Storia Augusta. So him liking flashy clothes, that's what we are told. Okay. But Caracalla was supposed to be a manly man. Like Caracalla, you see the bust? Caracalla was brutal. You know the scene when Caracalla is all afraid because people are all complaining outside, and he's like, "Oh, they want our heads." Caracalla, he had the same situation with people in Alexandria of Egypt, and he had a huge chunk of the population slaughtered because of it. It was a brutal man. So that is not Caracalla. Geta, I'm good. Caracalla,
they needed
that would have been more
like
interesting
because
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say the Denzel Washington character, Macrinus, he's real. He's a historical character. And the whole thing that, I don't know your name, so I'm going to say Critical Drinker, if you don't mind. What Critical Drinker was saying is that, yes, the whole political intrigue, that's all correct. But he will become emperor for a year. So he doesn't decide to fight a gladiator like that and die in this. What about spoiler alerts? I don't want to.
Spoiler.
It's Friday Night Lights.
Yes, I suppose. Anyways, that didn't happen, and it's nonsense that they have him die like that. And the character Macrinus, I don't have a problem with them casting Denzel Washington because he may have been black, maybe. Maybe Semitic, maybe black, we don't know. And I'm happy.
Like the first person from outside, of a different status of birth to actually come up and become emperor, right?
Yep. Exactly. But I want to connect to what you just said now, because at one point they have this sentence that he states, and he says, "I was once owned, and now I will own an empire." He was never owned. Macrinus was never a slave. Also, he never had a gladiatorial school, but I understand that one for storytelling purposes. But he was not a slave. So he was a man of humble origins that ended up becoming the Praetorian prefects under Caracalla. And that is an amazing story to me. Imagine a sentence, instead of saying, "I'm a black man, so I was once owned, slavery bad." Instead of doing that, which to me is insulting, in fact, why don't you say, "No, I'm a man of humble origin, but now I have the command of the Praetorian Guard. And I will one day rule the empire," which he will, for 1 year, and then they behead him. That's a little anticlimactic, I get it, but maybe remove that part. But I'm saying it's wasted. They added the whole, "I was the slave of Marcus Aurelius," but that's not real. That didn't happen. And I don't understand why they felt the need to add it. Black man was a slave. He wasn't.
Because it's two sides of American culture. The second one would be the American dream, that anyone can rise to be like the president kind of thing. Whereas the other one would be the sort of the leftist American shame of this is where the country originated. And so you're looking at two sides of the same coin, but nobody likes being just shamed in a movie that you want for entertainment.
I mean, Ridley just straight up said, the sharks were brought up, that are in the Colosseum.
He's like, because we thought it would be awesome. Yeah.
Well, the Romans did have sharks. The Romans did have sharks.
Some people were saying they didn't know what sharks were, and that's bullshit.
No, that's wrong. They had them. They were farming them in the coast near Rome. But the transportation of sharks would be problematic because that would be
difficult. Yes,
depending on the species. The reality is that the sources mention in the Naumachia, so that sort of flooding of the arena, which happens in imperial time, they mention crocodiles and hippopotamus rather than sharks.
Which are way more dangerous than sharks. Hippos would be way more dangerous. Pliny mentioned it, Marshall mentions it. There are a few mentions. The rhino is also fine.
I can get the desire to show the sheer spectacle of what they were capable of doing in the Colosseum. It's like, holy shit, they actually filled this thing with water and had naval battles in it? Well, yeah, they did. But it's a lot to try and cram into a film.
Not to mention that even this idea of, oh my gosh, free Numidia, we need to prevent. Numidia hadn't been free since 105 BC, so 300 years before is when that battle happens. The last bastion of freedom in North Africa is Mauritania, which is modern-day Algeria and Morocco, so west of Numidia. Numidia would be in Africa Proconsularis, so basically where you have now, I want to say Libya a little bit, just to have an idea. And they weren't free. That thing happened with Gaius Marius 300 years before the setting of this movie. When I saw that at the beginning of the film, I thought, okay, I'm watching Warhammer Fantasy. So once you come, and at the end of the day, you've got Skull Crusher of Khorne on top of Rhinoceros anyways. It's like blood for the blood god, skulls for the throne of Khorne. So at the end of the day, it's fantasy. So the chronology is completely out of place. It's just there's nothing. Like it's Claudius is. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, the first one, obviously, the Emperor Commodus doesn't actually get killed by Maximus Decimus Meridius in a gladiatorial pit. Like, that doesn't happen, right? Like, the first one is very much Roman history with an element of where it's changed these things around, change this character around, and create our story within the space, Yeah,
it's called a historical fiction, and it's common enough. But the thing about historical fiction is it needs to be grounded in some measure of history for it to really be sold. And I think the first one did this. This one has some truly retarded crap for its historical period. Freaking had trebuchets like 300 years before that. I was like, what the freaking hell is that doing there?
With the counterweight.
I know. And it's got crap like that, like speckled throughout, where it just makes it, you can't even take it seriously if you're into history at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's total fantasy. That's why I walked into it. But I think it's awesome because I'll watch your video and I'll listen to Shad stuff because then you learn the real history, which is, it ends up being cooler, much cooler.
I do have to ask, on ships, the towers on the ships that land on a wall, is that as stupid as it looked? Like, from
it happened like once historically from my references, but it is pretty retarded. And you need very specific circumstances to make that a viable military strategy, which it happened, like I said, like once, maybe twice, like not often. But the way they showed in the film is just bonkers stupid, where they have small ships with small detachments of soldiers on those ships, which means even if you get one in place, there's a very limited amount of soldiers can get on the wall now, and most likely they'd get destroyed or taken out. You'd need a massive one with a huge detachment of soldiers gone. And also, they didn't show that it was the only, it looked like there was other viable approaches to the city. And so when I saw them approaching on the boats with these stupid small siege towers on them, I was like, this is so retarded. I'm watching one of the dumbest sieges I've ever seen.
So if it's a coastal city that you want to besiege, like, fine, blockade it with your ships and then land your troops on shore and have them encircle it. Like, surely that's a lot easier.
And once again, the Romans controlled everything else around anyways. Even if this was 300 years before, they controlled everything. So already, sort of, almost, except for Mauritania at that point. So yeah, you can absolutely do that. It's a good point.
Oh, they even showed the bridges that fall down from those siege towers, not even long enough to, extend past the front of the boat. They the way they showed it, like, they just magic editing that now they're suddenly reaching the wall. They wouldn't even reach the wall. There was so much retarded crap in that siege, where I think I'm going to do a dedicated video.
Did you see the bronze helmets of the soldiers, the Numidian soldiers? That they look like they're literally from a museum because they have the patina. The green patina. Yeah. And I mean, I love it. I love it. I mean, if any museum wants to gift me one, I will gladly accept it and keep it in that condition. But the sources tell us that they polished bronze constantly.
It's even so crazy when you see those helmets, Metatron, and you see how small they were.
They wouldn't fit. Yeah, they wouldn't fit.
Hey, I know the Greeks did it, but did the Romans paint their statues as well in period?
Yes, very good point. All the statues in there are white. They should have been in color and painted with pigment. Same for the temples. They shouldn't be white. They should be blues and reds, bright colors. Roman polychromy is everywhere in architecture, absolutely. The only difference would be bronze statues, because they would use the different chromatic varieties of bronze depending on the constituents to create different colors, because bronze can be yellow, can be reddish, can be brown, has different, depends on what you put inside. So the bronze statues wouldn't be painted, but all marble statues should be absolutely in color. So that also puzzled me.
at least in that, to kind of immerse an audience, I think there's an element of you have to give them what they expect rather than what's accurate. People have an image in their head of what Rome looked like, and so that's probably what they're going for.
See, to me, I'm like, screw the audience. We need to.
Yeah, me and Shad are not going to agree with that. Me and Shad, but then again, we are nerds.
But I get what you're saying.
Well, all the hieroglyphics were painted too in Egypt. They were painted. They weren't plain.
Talking about that, did you see that the commemorative building section for Maximus Decimus Meridius has a thing written on it in English? I was amazed.
Oh, did it really?
It was next level retardation.
It was
because
it was American.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
And we can't even read English. Like, what's the point?
There is one more room with Lucilla, who, by the way, died in 182, so she should be dead. I just needed to say that. But she enters this room, and once again, the poetry on the walls is in English. And I don't understand that choice because it kills my immersion. Maybe I'm the only one who cares. I don't know.
It was strange when Lucilla put some clothes in a washer. I thought that was pretty odd.
Did you see the guy? Did you see the guy sitting reading a newspaper in what appeared to be a modern Italian cafe? I say as an Italian.
Yes.
Yeah, I was like, what on earth is going on?
Did Romans print newspapers? Did they have those?
Then a printing press? What?
Free Capua.
Would you like a cappuccino?
Sì, cappuccino, grazie.
Grazie.
Nerdrotic.com. Please subscribe.